Japan into that framework a little bit on artificial intelligence, autonomy, or other areas. What do you see the role of academic institutions in terms of bringing the countries together?
In fact, you were in South Korea recently, and there is a move afoot with them. And I was wondering why Japan is missing there. Just a question. Gautam Saxena?
Thank you, Samir. Morning, Dr. Jaishankar. I wanted to actually bring in another region into this conversation and the increasing interaction of India in the Middle East and the powerful connections built there. It almost seems that India has a choice. A bunch of very strong countries knocking at the door. So when you think about commercial partnerships, is there a certain direction for certain sectors when you look at Japan or Singapore or Middle East?
Prioritizing the opportunities in some sense. Anyone else? We have probably chance for one more. Please go ahead. Introduce yourself quickly again.
I have a question with regard to manufacturing specifically. It depends on manufacturing in our case, shipbuilding. What I notice is some Japanese companies, like Suzuki Motor for instance, have already identified very strong growth potential in India. That's not the case in shipbuilding and manufacturing sectors. There are three areas in which I feel...
Just a question, please. Yeah.
Why is there not an industrial policy and an energy policy connect between India and Japan so that low labor costs and availability of labor, low energy costs in India, especially renewable energy. The cheapest solar power plant in India is 4 times cheaper than the most economical one in Japan, and of course the convergence of markets. I think we can connect at these three policies, labor, energy and markets needs to be at a deeper level, and my request and suggestion to the governments would be to create that connect, which would actually encourage Japanese industries to invest much more.
Okay. I didn't find a question there. I found a long suggestion there, which I think will be duly noted. But the
I got it.
But sir, as we turn this over to you, I think one of the underlying themes of India's rise in India's economic pace, as you travel this particular region, South Korea and now Japan, how is the assessment of the broader community of this rise? One is how we assess our own rise. And what is the kind of response you're seeing from your partners as you travel through different parts of the world on India's rise? What is the difference in their conversations with you in the last few years or last few months?
Again, I see some commonalities what Mr. Batra said, what Ajay said at the end, and to some extent what Vivek's suggestion was. Some of the current PLI schemes do have climate action indications, some of them. But your point that we should focus it very much more, I certainly note, and I will discuss it with my colleagues. On Vivek's point about involving academic institutions, actually, it's interesting. This is one of the subtle changes which has started happening in India. I mean, a good example of it has been the 5G stack, which is currently being rolled out, and the role that IIT has had in that. And in quite a few other examples, I've actually seen today a willingness on the part of the governmental bureaucracy to reach out to academic institutions and contract them or to seek their advice and knowledge. Because, a change, when I speak about the pace of change in India, I would even venture to suggest there's been some mindset evolution. the idea that there are many things the government doesn't know and it needs to find the requisite experience somewhere in the environment. I think that kind of feeling has grown. What Ajay, you were saying, about labor, energy, industrial policies. To me, shipbuilding is a very exceptional field because when I look at Indian capabilities, India's growth and India's capabilities, the one area where I don't see growth reflected in capabilities is actually in shipping and in shipbuilding. Shipbuilding is actually better than shipping. It's one big gap today if you were to look at India's portfolio, and I think policymakers certainly are very conscious of it. But again, my advice is the expectation that there is a lack of policy connect. I think business made a push. I'm not saying policy is always connected. Quite often it is not. But when businesses make a push, they compel policy exchanges, and out of that policy connects to happen. So again, I would urge very much, that if I were to look back, say the last decade of how much our ties with the US has changed, a big part of the push has actually come from businesses at both ends. That often they have made the linkages and provide the solutions and urge the government to go and, why don't you look, this is feasible, which left to itself maybe the government would have concluded it's not. On the Middle East, do we have a choice? Yes, today, we have, I would say, very strong relations with all the Gulf states, and in fact, beyond as well, with Egypt, for example, certainly with Israel. Within the region, we have managed to navigate the challenges, the divides and the frictions of the region. But if I were to look at it globally today, for India, and India, which till the early 90s was very reliant on the Soviet world, which then broadened it out, and which then built up its relations in the East with ASEAN and then with Northeast Asia. Then we had to look at other areas where there were options. In the last decade, we've invested a lot of effort in the Middle East and on Europe. And I think the US too, that relationship has matured. So if I were to, because I'm eventually leading to your question. Today when I look at the entirety of the world, I would say yes, we have spread out much more. There are many more partners. There are regions, in say Latin America. Today, we would, for many of the big Latin America companies, we would be the third or fourth largest trade partner. Whereas just 10 years ago, we'd be considered very far away. There are certain fields like energy, where, in energy or even in today in food security, where Indian companies have actually gone out. In fact, when I look at some other relationship, B2B has been, I went on a trip to Latin America. And on one trip, I went to 4 countries where no foreign minister in our history had ever been. In each country, I found Indian business was there. And not just there, Indian business has got to all the right places. So sometimes business is ahead of you. Sometimes it is behind you. I'm happy when they're ahead of us. But the question, Shamit, to sum up, how do partners perceive us? I think they are absorbing the changes, looking at, okay, this is now a bigger India, bigger GDP, more capabilities. So what are they doing with it? Do they, let us say, if I were to give you an example, when I look today at the climate, the COP21 or the COP26 or the COP28, our relative importance and the expectations of us are more. When I look at even conferences like the SDG conference or the Summit of the Future conference, which is coming up at the UN, again, people expect more. If there are conflict situations, where does India stand becomes an issue. Even in bodies where we have been there a long time, like the non-aligned or the G77, people have factored in what has changed in India. So the challenge for us is also to prepare our own people today for a bigger global presence, a larger responsibility. When you send people, when we give, let us say, development assistance, we have to, it is important to explain to your people why you're doing it. Or if you are sending a first responder team to an earthquake in Turkey or to a conflict zone, and the more Indians globalize, I mean, we have today roughly 20 million Indian nationals working abroad, and about maybe about 12, 13 people, a million people who were of Indian origin but foreign nationalities. Now, when you have so many people working abroad, that is also a responsibility for which we have to prepare. When COVID happened in the first year, we brought back 7 million Indians who were working abroad, where airlines had shut down, shipping lines had shut down, universities had shut down. So it's a different era today which we have entered, but we have just entered it. There is a ground there to navigate. But in that navigation, again, I'm coming back like a broken record to my main plea, which is that the India-Japan, I do regard that because among the relationships, it's not a regional relationship, it is truly actually a globally consequential relationship. And in this world, this digital world we are entering, the world of AIs, of new ISET, the critical emerging technologies, I think there is a much new potential really to reforge that relationship at a higher level, and that would be the message that I would give to all of you.
No, thank you so much, sir, for your address and for engaging with all of us this morning. Let me confirm to you that on our part, Maida-san, Ninami-san and I, we are determined that this become an annual feature, and we convene communities from both sides so that we can have common purpose, common vision and a common pathway to the future. Please join me in applauding the Honorable Minister for his intervention this morning. We will take a 10-minute break and be back for the closed door of the record conversations that will follow.
The first pertains to the order itself, created by the accumulation of political and economic rebalancing, accelerated by globalization, and now reflected in emerging multipolarity. Whatever metrics we use, GDP, technology, influence, or demography, the top 20 or 30 nations today are not what they were 2 decades ago. Even less so what they were 4 or 8 decades ago. Not only are the countries that impact us different, but so are their relative weight, importance, and capability. As a result, new balances are being sought and occasionally achieved. This drives the volatility that we currently characterizes the global order. The second refers to the structure of the order. That has frayed in many ways, becoming less predictable or even less disciplined. In fact, there is a considerable amount of disorder. It has become much harder to create a consensus among more players, especially as they do not agree on their inter se position. What we see in multilateralism, especially the United Nations, is both an expression of this as well as a cause. Consequently, we are turning increasingly to like-minded partners who gather together for a particular purpose. The third is in regard to the landscape. After 1945, this was neatly compartmentalized into theaters for the convenience of dominant powers. That has begun to change as capabilities are constrained and commitments come into question. A more modest era requires greater collaboration. And it also requires wider arenas to be effective. A good example of this is the emergence of the Indo-Pacific. Fourth, there are the different challenges that we confront. 3 decades of globalization have created tremendous economic and technology concentrations, which now have major strategic implications. These have led to the leveraging of trade, of investment, connectivity, resources, even of mobility. In many cases, the nature of power itself has undergone a change. This has been aggravated further by the impact of technology. National boundaries no longer provide effective defense. On the contrary, every technology advance, AI or chips, green or clean tech, space or drones, has also brought its own new vulnerabilities. Few nations can deal with it on their own. At the same time, the competition for primacy has also become more intense. Fifth, to add to this mix is a shift in global attitudes. The unequal benefits of globalization and the stagnation in the quality of life of many societies has created political backlash. The trauma of COVID has made the world even more insecure. We have all experienced what it is to depend on others for basic necessities. Strategic autonomy is therefore sought by many more countries and regions. Sixth, in this background, it is not surprising that global risk-taking has been on the increase. We see it in conflict in Europe, in disregard for international law in Asia, and in the ongoing developments in the Middle East, and often in the weaponization of the normal. Long-standing agreements are not being necessarily observed, raising question marks about the stability of the environment in which we all operate. Seventh, the most universal expression of the global order is still the United Nations. Its reform is therefore of paramount importance. As fellow members of the G4 grouping, India and Japan seek to make the UN structures more contemporary. This is clearly an uphill task, but one in which we must persevere. As to powers that are so central to multipolarity in Asia, it is also in our common interest that the overall balance remains in favor of freedom, openness, transparency, and a rules-based order. The world will watch how we support each other in this shared goal through various relationships and initiatives. FOIP, which Prime Minister Kishida mentioned at length, is particularly important in this regard. And eighth, I think it's important that Japan today appreciates the pace of change in India. This is a country today which is building 28 kilometers of highway every day, which is creating 8 new airports every year, which is establishing 1.5 to 2 metros every year, which has, for the last 10 years, built 2 new colleges every day, and which has doubled its technical and medical institutions and output. This transformation of India makes us a more effective and credible partner. Whether it is the ease of doing business, infrastructure development, ease of living, digital delivery, a startup and innovation culture, or shaping the international agenda, India is clearly a very different country today. This is important for Japanese to recognize. Summing it all up, the world is now more volatile, uncertain, unpredictable, and open-ended. This is the prospect that India and Japan have to confront, both from their national perspectives as well as from the point of view of their own relationship. Can we safeguard stability, security, freedom, progress, and prosperity for ourselves, for the larger region, and indeed for the world? So with that in mind, there are a few propositions that are worth examining. One, can our economic weight be a greater stabilizing factor between India and Japan, trade has stagnated, but investments have been much more dynamic. Is there scope for a big jump? And I refer here to what Ninami-san said, that today make in India and export from India are two possibilities which should be explored by Japanese companies. Second, the deployment of technologies that are on the horizon is clearly going to be a game changer. Is there scope for collaboration in that regard? Obvious examples are the semiconductor domain, electric mobility, renewables, artificial intelligence, and space. But can we build the necessary talent connect? Third, as two nations with strong climate change priorities, can we develop a practical cooperation in support of our global objectives? Japan has a history of involvement with logistics and mass transportation in India. While our energy trajectories may have been separate so far, green hydrogen and green ammonia are bringing many potential partners together. Are these new areas worth exploring? Four, connectivity is also acquiring greater salience with new production and consumption centers. India is today working on major corridors, both to its east and to its west. They include, on the west, the IMEC initiative through the Arabian Peninsula and the International North-South Transport Corridor. And to the east, the trilateral highway in Southeast Asia and the Chennai-Vladivostok route that also has polar implications. Bear in mind, if these corridors, when they are completed, essentially would connect the Atlantic to the Pacific through Asia. Our two nations have converging views about the need for transparent and collaborative connectivity. So how can we collaborate in this domain? A fifth proposition is that in a world where global commons and global good is being shortchanged every day, greater development efforts by the more capable international players is imperative. As a voice of the global South, India is particularly conscious of this responsibility. Our development efforts today span 78 nations across different continents. Can India and Japan coordinate in regard to their development assistance? Sixth, the responsibility to safeguard and secure is no less onerous. Maritime safety and security have become particularly pressing concerns. We can see that at the Red Sea every day. We've just had the first casualties there in shipping. So have issues of cyber security. At the same time, the challenges of the past and the present remain very much with us. Counter-terrorism is a good example. It is also necessary to strengthen our defense capabilities for the benefit of the larger region. This family of defense and security concerns are likely to occupy a larger place in our thinking. So let me conclude with three broad observations. One, the world is heading for re-globalization with building of resilient and reliable supply chains and trusted and transparent digital transactions. India and Japan are natural partners in that regard. Two, as democracies and market economies, we also share basic affinities. Our commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific is being taken forward by the Quad with each passing year. The value of this contribution is also being increasingly appreciated across the world. And three, as we look at the opportunities and challenges of the future, the comfort we have built up is a foundation today to think more ambitiously. The progress in India in the last decade promises even more for our partnership. This gathering has been convened precisely to assess the future of our collaboration. I look forward to its deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, External Affairs Minister, for that concise and yet extensive sweep on the state of play between India, Japan, and of course in context of the global developments. We are now going to have a few questions and remarks posed to you, Minister. We first start by Maida-san. We invite him if he wants to pose a question or some comments based on your speech, sir.
Thank you. Actually, both speakers of the EAM S and Dr. Jaishankar talk about huge opportunity of cooperation to countries on various sectors and also the broader spectrum. My sense is that just only the blue chip cooperation investment and also that the expansion of business is not enough. We need to bring and foster startup for that the new economies and also that to cope with vulnerability and volatility and uncertainty and very divided the world right now. And trust is very important, so that by making of some of the endowment, that's a good proposal, and we need to have, for the endowment, we need to have kind of joint taxation, the exemption mechanism. That's very important to facilitate more endowment, and also that philanthropy as well. That we need the philanthropy will be a basic points to develop this endowment. Not just only business interests, but also philanthropy is very important. So that's the ORF now. I believe they have a young fellow, the initiative to expand to that, not just only the Indo-Pacific, but also others part of the world, including Africa and the Middle East. And also that India has a huge kind of potential for that region. So I have a couple of questions to both Minasan and also Dr. Jaishankar. How the Japanese businesses and Japanese startup and can work together with Indian businesses startup in third countries. How we can build up the roadmap to work together in third countries and especially like-minded countries. So I'm also very curious about the position of the Indian to Russia, because I usually talk about Chennai, Vladivostok, the connectivity. So that's very briefly. But I'm very curious about your vision on how we can talk, we can not cooperate, but we can deal with Russia while they continue to make that aggression to your neighbor.
Thank you, Meda-san. Nami-san, do you want to come in at this stage and add something?
Startup engage between India and Japan. As a matter of fact, it has already started, but not only India and Japan, but also Silicon Valley, ASEAN countries. How we can draw the line only between Japan and India. I think those startups, leaders mostly from India, quite a lot. And believe me, I think it's been already engaging between Japan and India in that space. But how to promote the activity? It's the issue. So we Yokai are working with them, and the METI is supporting startup activities in the region, in the Pacific region. So I think we've been working on it, but that scene should be more visible to the ASEAN countries, of course, not only in Japan and India. So how we can demonstrate the reality of the current engagements between India and Japan. That's startup space.
Yes. Your question, what do we do more in third countries. I think we need to do more in second countries, in our own relationship. Because when I look at the pace of change today and the new opportunities today in India, I don't see that reflected really in the dynamism of our times. That I would say you guys come every year. I will receive you and look after you. Because what is happening today is that the ground situation in India is changing at a very rapid. I mean, even we who live in India today struggle to keep up with the pace of change. I go to the same city or town which I went 2 years ago, and I find it's very different. Because there are some places where we will naturally meet. The US is one. But to me today, making our relationship bigger and more consequential and also more contemporary. That when you look at these new and emerging areas. Here are there possibilities of our working together. This really. The other is really the middle classization of India. That when we just look at what is happening bottom up. Okay. In the last 10 years, you actually have had 250 million people who would have been classified as being in absolute poverty now get out of it. Which really means the baseline of the society has moved up. So you are creating a new middle class, you are creating a new middle class, you are creating upper middle class. So all of which even for your business is new demand and new consumption. So I think that's probably where we should be putting our energy. The Russia issue. What is happening? What happens sometimes in life is in history is that things are not always go the way they are expected to or the way it is calculated to. Essentially, if you look at the last 2 years, Russia has because of the Ukraine conflict, today the Russia-Western relationship is broken down. Okay. Economically, it means that a lot of access which Russia had to the Western world is no longer there. And historically, Russia has always put a premium. That is the main access for them. So you actually have today the prospect of Russia turning more and more towards Asia. It can also turn to other continents, but I would say Asia is the most dynamic possibility for them. So we are already seeing a flow of Russian trade, of investment, resources, of even collaborations towards Asian destinations. I don't think it will be a short-term trend. I think what will happen is continues for a few years. In any case, Russia will obviously once it is set, will give it up. So they will consolidate on that. So I expect actually in a way almost like a change in Russia's direction. Towards the world. And I think it has very interesting implications for us in Asia, because like any big power, Russia will also want multiple options.
Let me bring in a few in the room, and we'll collect a question and turn it back to you, sir. Can I bring Wong Kim Yin, CEO of Singapore?
Yes. First of all, thank you to the organizers for having us here. Sembcorp is a company that is based in Singapore. And I want to echo Dr. Jaishankar's this comment about pace of change in India. We experienced it firsthand over the last few years. We invested some $5 billion into India, most of it in the last 3 years. So we're focused in renewables and now working with Japanese partners to develop hydrogen business. Part of our mind is thinking about production in India for delivery into Japan to help decarbonization. Dr. Jaishankar mentioned both countries, India as well as Japan, have ambitious energy transition plans. What would you say to business community, people like us, that we can do to further accelerate, to leverage on this pace that you just mentioned, and for us to contribute and right onto this very ambitious energy transition plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I bring Professor Pawan Kapoor from the Naval Postgraduate School at Hoover Institute?
Thank you, Samir. Dr. Jaishankar, we've heard a lot about economic challenges and opportunities for India and Japan and the Indo-Pacific region, how they work together to meet and leverage those opportunities and challenges to ensure a free and open Indo-Pacific. But lurking in the background of the economic landscape is a hard power challenge resulting from China's rise in behavior. And a foundation of security is really going to be necessary to achieve the economic goals that we're talking about for those to be realized and for the Indo-Pacific to remain free and open. I wonder if you could say a little bit about how you see that hard power challenge and how India, Japan, and the other countries perhaps as well can cooperate to meet it and create that background security that will be necessary for us to achieve our economic goals and ensure the freedom and openness of the Indo-Pacific region. Thank you.
Can I bring in Yamamoto-san?
Thank you, Samir. And thank you, Minister, Excellency, and Maeda-san and Minami-san. Such a very thought-provoking conversation. Minister, my question is about building on the conversation that we heard. Is about green transition and climate action. And in this green transition and climate action, very important field, how to facilitate more private sector collaboration between Japan and India. And let me a little bit more to that. Since yesterday, we heard a lot of things about long history of two great nations, and we now at the G2G level, we have a highest level of partnership. And you emphasized the importance of like-minded partners. We are. And on that, you are NIF and our JPIC set up Japan-India Fund last year to facilitate collaboration in this very important field of green transition and climate action. But building on my question from my colleague from Singapore, what can we do as a private sector to do more? That's my question. Thank you.
So can I just add to that question? In your assessment, is the P2P or the B2B, the business to business and the people to people, underperforming vis-a-vis the G2G in the India-Japan context? Okay. You already have that. Great. Final intervention is from Indranil Chit from Pune. Where are you, Indranil?
Hello.
Yeah.
Good morning, sir. Sir, the way the Indian economy is poised to grow, we are going to get more and more stable. And that way, how do you see the policy evolve with how India engages with the world?
Over to you, sir.
I'll take the three in a way economic questions and then come to Dr. Kapoor's hard power challenge. I mean, in different ways, you're all asking the same thing. Our colleague from Singapore says, how do I leverage the pace? You are asking, saying Yamamoto-san saying, okay, there's a green transition, we both are committed to climate change, now what do we do? And my colleague here from Pune is asking, saying, okay, Indian economy is growing. What's the nature of its engagement with the world? I feel in one common answer, which is what I pointed to Samir on a slip, is to in many I would say most relationships today the G2G has actually gone out ahead. So Japan is definitely a case, where if you look at the frequency of our meetings at various levels, it's very impressive. we are not seeing enough the similar B2B and P2P. Ideally, just think about it. If you have today a $3.5 trillion economy which is growing at 7%, you would imagine logically that there would be many more business delegations actually coming and exploring that. There are. But I don't see that many from Japan. And forgive my saying it, I also don't see that money from Singapore as I used to. So what I actually when I look at the levels of interest, very honestly, within ourselves, I would say I've suddenly seen Europe awake. That when I look today at the intensity with which Europe is today engaging in, it's like somebody turned on that switch. The US is doing it. The US has been doing it pretty consistently, and the trajectory goes up. So we would really be very much more interested. The paradox is in the Indian mind, the era of reform was the era when we actually consciously moved to the economies east of India. So for us, look east, act east, ASEAN, then the Northeast Asia, Japan, Korea, China. This is associated with the last 30 years. So and there is a suddenly with Japan, the weight of history is positive, the government relations are very good, the country branding is great. So you have everything going for you, but I'm not saying that the business community really take up that challenge. There is one requirement in a way, and that's particularly relevant for Singapore. When my colleague sitting here with me on my right asked, what does India do now? The Indian economy is externalizing. If you look in terms the trade levels are going up, exports are going up, FDI, both inward outward are going up. We have much more portfolio investments coming into our stock markets. When I look at the levels of travel that is going up, in fact one new trend we have seen is actually mobility. That more and more Indians are going out professionally, either as skills and STEM talent, or as service providers, or in certain geographies even as blue collar workers. So if you ask me what is the direction we're going, definitely the engagement of the world is getting deeper. And again from the government point of view, we are trying to give it some shape. Which is why we have done in this term true FTAs with UAE and Australia. We have an FTA with EFTA countries, which is very advanced with UK and EU under negotiation, and a few others as well. So my urging would be really that today business needs to kind of stay pace with the government. Also at the P2P level, I look at the total number of Indian students abroad. At any given time, there are today between 1.1 to 1.3 million Indian students abroad. I think not even 5% of it comes to Japan. So you can somewhere how to translate that goodwill into something more specific and concrete. That's an effort we need to make. So coming from that to the hard power challenge. Yes, there is the reality. There's the reality of very big power shifts in the Indo-Pacific. when there are very big shifts in capabilities and influence and presumably ambitions, then there are all the accompanying political and strategic consequences of that. Now the question is, this is not a question. It's not an issue whether you like it or you don't like it. There's a reality out there. You have to deal with that reality. Ideally, we would assume that everybody would say, okay, things are changing, but let's keep it as stable as we can. Unfortunately, that's not what we have seen in the last decade. I mean, our own experience in the case of China, for example, is between 1975 to 2020, which is really 45 years. There was no bloodshed on the border, and in 2020 it changed. And today, when we look at we can disagree on many things. But when a country actually sort of does not observe written agreements with a neighbor, then I think you have cause for concern here, because it then raises a question mark about the stability of the relationship and frankly about intentions. So for us today, certainly, how to, in a changing world, our own equilibrium, our own balances with other countries are changing as well. I mean, they don't have to be acrimonious, but the balance is changing. I mean, we cannot become, in GDP from number 11 to number 5 and everything remains the same. It will not remain the same. But how to create more new equilibriums in a less frictional manner. I think that is today the management of the global order. Some of us are trying to help. Some of us apparently have other approaches. And I think that is the issue.
I'm going to take 3 interventions, and I'm going to turn it back to you after that, sir. So let me first turn to, since I've received a note from Varun Batra. Varun, why don't you pose the first question? Short questions.
Yes.
We need to give him a chance to respond.
Good morning, so thank you, Dr. Jaishankar, for your comments. I think just sensing the mood around the room and the gap that the private sector has to fill because the government has gone way ahead in its dialogue. Would you consider, the PLI scheme has been so successful for EMS manufacturing in India, generating jobs, generating investment. Could you consider a similar scheme? Of course, you don't have to answer it now, but could the government consider a similar scheme for the entire climate change, energy transition piece? And I think you'll find a lot of purchase there amongst Japanese corporates, just using the same framework which you elaborated about, bringing the technology and producing there.
Can I turn to Vivek Lal?
Honorable Minister, good morning. In terms of critical and emerging technologies, as you know, the US and India have had great success in advancing that agenda. Bringing Japan into that framework agenda, a little bit on artificial intelligence or autonomy or other areas. Framework, a little bit on artificial intelligence and autonomy or other areas in terms of bringing the academic institutions in terms of bringing the countries together.
And there is a move afoot with them. And in fact, you were wondering why Japan is missing there. There is just a move afoot with them. And I was wondering why Japan is missing there. Just a question.
Thank you, Samir. Good morning, Dr. Jaishankar. I wanted to thank you, Samir. Actually, bring in another region Dr. Jaishankar conversation and I wanted to increasing. Actually, bring in another region in the Middle East conversation and the increasing connections built there. Interaction of India in the Middle East. That India has a choice of connections built there. It almost seems that India very strong has a choice countries knocking at the door. So when you think about very strong commercial partnerships knocking at the door, a certain direction about for certain commercial partnerships. When you look at Japan or a certain direction for certain sectors. When you look at a Japan or a Singapore or a Middle East.
Opportunities in some sense. Anyone else? We have probably a chance for one more. Please go opportunities in some sense. Anyone else? We have probably a chance for one more. Please go ahead. Introduce yourself quickly and.
in India. I have a question with regard to manufacturing in India. Because we depend on manufacturing. I have a question with regard to manufacturing. What I notice is some Japanese depend on manufacturing. Automotive, Suzuki Motor, for instance. What I notice is some Japanese companies strong growth potential in India. For instance, that's not the case in shipbuilding and very strong growth potential in India. There are three areas in which I feel manufacturing sectors. There are three areas in which I feel.
Ajay Singh, question please.
Policy,
Yeah.
labor policy, and energy policy connect between India and Japan, so that low labor costs and available India and Japan. So the energy costs in India, low labor costs, renewable availability of labor, the cheapest solar power energy costs in India, plant in India is 4 times cheaper, the cheapest than the most economical one in Japan, plant in India, and of course the convergence of markets than the most economical one in Japan. These three policies, and of course the convergence of markets, and I think we connect at these three policies, a deeper level. And my request and suggestion to the government, we'll create a deeper level. And my request and suggestion to the government to invest, to create that connect, which would actually encourage Japanese industry to invest.
I didn't find a question there. I found a long suggestion there, which I think will be duly noted. I didn't find a question there. I found a long suggestion there, which I think will be duly noted. But sir, as we turn this over to you,
I got it.
I think one of the sir, as we turn this over to you, underlying themes of India's rise and India's economic pace. One of the underlying themes as you travel this particular region, South Korea and now Japan. As you travel this particular region, South Korea and now Japan, this rise. One is how we assess our own rise, and what is the kind of response you're seeing from your partners as you travel through our own rise, different parts of the world. And what is the kind of response you're seeing from your partners as you travel through their different parts of the conversations with you on India's rise? What is the difference in their conversations with you in the last few years or last few months?
Again, I see some commonalities. Again, Mr. Batra said, I see some commonalities. To some extent, Batra said, Ajay said right at the end, and to some extent, some of the current PLI schemes, have. Some of the current PLI schemes do have your point that we should focus it very much more. But your point that we should focus it very much more with my colleagues. I certainly note and on Vivek's point about involving academic institutions. Actually, it's interesting. This is one of the subtle changes which actually, it's interesting. This is one of the subtle changes. A good example of it has been the 5G. A good example of it has been which is currently being rolled out, and the role that IIT has had, which is currently being rolled out, and the role that IIT has had. Quite a few other examples I can actually seen today. Quite a willingness on the part of the governmental bureaucracy to reach out to willingness on the part of the governmental bureaucracy to reach out to academic institutions and contract them, or because seek their advice and knowledge. A change. Because when I speak about the pace of change in India, a change, even when I speak about the pace of change in India, I would even venture to suggest there has been some mindset. There are many things the government doesn't know, and it needs to find the requisite experience somewhere. The government doesn't know, and it needs to find the requisite experience somewhere has grown in the environment. I think that kind of feeling. Ajay, you were saying about labor, energy, industrial policies. Ajay, you were saying about labor, energy, industrial policies. Very to me exceptional. Shipbuilding is a very because when I look at Indian capabilities, India's growth and India's capabilities. The one area where I don't see growth reflected in India's capabilities in shipping. The one area where I don't see growth reflected in actually better than actually in shipping. It's one big gap. Shipbuilding is actually better than shipping. If you were to look at India's it's one big portfolio today. And I think policymakers certainly are very conscious. But again, my advises the expectation that there is a lack of policy advises the expectation that there is a lack of policy. I'm not saying policy is always connected. I think if businesses made a push, often it is not. I'm not saying policy is always connected. When businesses make a push, they compel policy exchanges. When businesses make a push, they compel policy exchanges. So, and out of that policy I would urge very very much, that. So again, I would urge to look back, say, at the last decade of how much our ties with the US. If I were to look back, say, at the last decade of how much our ties with the US has changed. That often they have made the linkages and provided the solutions and urged the government saying go and the linkages and provided the solutions and urged the government saying go and maybe the government would have concluded this is not. On the Middle East, maybe the government would have concluded it is not. Yes, today, we have, I would say, very strong relations with all the Gulf states. I would say, in fact, very strong relations with all the Gulf states. Egypt, for example, certainly with Israel as well. Within the region, we have managed to navigate within the region, we have managed to navigate the challenges. But if I were to look at it globally, for India, but if I were to look at it globally, and India, which till the early 90s was very reliant on the Soviet world, and India, which till the early 90s was very reliant on the Soviet world, which then built up its relations in the East with ASEAN and then with Northeast Asia, which then built up its relations in the East with ASEAN and then with Northeast Asia. Had to look at other areas where there were options. Then in the last decade, we've invested a lot of other areas where there were options. Middle East. In the last decade, we've invested a lot of effort, and I think the US, Middle East, and that relationship has matured. And I think if I were to, because I'm eventually leading that relationship has matured. So if I were to, because I'm eventually leading to your question, I would say today when I look at the entirety of the world, we have spread out much more. There are many more partners. There are regions spread out much more. There are many more partners. There are regions, we would for many of the big Latin America companies, we would be the third or fourth largest. Many of the big Latin America just 10 years ago, we would be the third or fourth largest. Very far away. Whereas just 10 years ago, there are certain fields like very far away. In energy or even in fields like food security, where Indian companies have energy or even in today food security. In fact, when I look at some other relationship, B2B has been out. I went on a trip to Latin America. Some other relationship, B2B has been to 4 countries. I went on a trip to Latin America. History had ever been. And on one trip, in each country, I found Indian business foreign minister. And not just there, Indian business had got to all the right places. In each country, I found Indian business was there. So, and not just there, Indian business had got to all the right places. Sometimes it is behind us. So sometimes I'm happy when they're ahead. Sometimes it is behind. So I'm happy when they're ahead of us. The question, Shamir, to sum up. But how do partners perceive us? Question, Shamir, to sum up. I think how do partners perceive us? Are absorbing the changes. I think they looking at, okay, this is now a bigger India. Looking GDP, at, more capabilities. This is now a bigger India. So what are they doing with bigger GDP, more capabilities? So what are they doing with? If I were to give you an example, do this when I look today, let us say the climate. If I were to give you an example, 21 or the COP 26, when I look today at the climate, the COP 21 or the COP 26 or the COP 28, our relative importance and the expectations of us are more. Our relative importance and the expectations of us conferences like the SDG conference or even conferences like the SDG which is coming up to the UN. Again, summit of the future conference which is coming up to the UN. If there are conflict situations, people expect more. If there are India's situations becomes an issue. Even in bodies where we have been there a long time becomes an issue. Like the non-aligned or the G77. Even in bodies where we have been there a long time. People have like the non-aligned or the G77 changed in India. People have factored in the what has challenge for us is also to prepare our own people. Challenge for us is also to prepare our own people. A larger responsibility. When you send people, when we give a larger responsibility, development. When you send people. When we give, we have to. It is important to explain to your people why you're doing it. If you are sending a first responder, to explain to your people why you're doing earthquake in Turkey. If you are sending a first responder team to conflict zone in Turkey, and the more Indians globalize a conflict zone. I mean, we have the more Indians globalize. Roughly 20 million Indian nationals working abroad. Roughly about 20 million Indian nationals working abroad. A million people, and about maybe Indian origin, 12, 13 people, a million people. Now, when you have so many people working Indian origin, that is also a responsibility for which we have so many people working abroad. When COVID happened in the first year, we brought back 7 million Indians. When COVID happened in the first year, we brought back 7 million Indians. Shut down, shipping lines had shut down, universities had shut down, airlines had shut down, shipping lines had shut down. Today, universities have entered, but we have just entered. So it's a different era today, which we have entered. But we have just ground there to navigate. But in that navigation, again, I'm coming back. Ground there to navigate. But in that navigation, again, I'm coming back like a broken record to my main regard, which is that the India-Japan, among the relationships, it's not a regional relationship. It is truly actually a globally among the relationships. It's not a regional relationship. It is truly actually a globally digital world. We are entering the world of AI. And with this world, this digital world, we are entering the world of AI technologies. I think there is a much new critical emerging technologies. I think there is a much that relationship new at a potential. Really, that would be the message that relationship.
Thank you so much, sir, for your address and for engaging with all of us this morning. Thank you so much, sir, for your address and for engaging with all of us this morning. Let me confirm to you that this become an annual feature, and we are determined that this becomes an annual so that we can have common purpose, common vision, and communities from both sides to the future. We can have common purpose, common vision, and Minister for his interventions this morning. Please join me in applauding the Honorable Minister for his interventions this morning. We will take a 10-minute break and be back for the 10-minute break and be back for the closed door of the record conversations that will follow.
Created by the accumulation. The first pertains to the order and economic, created by the accumulation, accelerated by globalization and economic, and now rebalancing in emerging accelerated by globalization. Whatever metrics we use in emerging GDP, technology, whatever metrics we use, GDP, the top 20 or 30 nations or today are not what they were 20 or 30 nations. Even less so are not what they were 2 decades ago. 8 decades ago. Even less so, not only are the countries that impact us different, but so not only are the countries that impact us different, but so as a result, relative weight, new balances are being sought and occasionally as a result. New balances are being sought. The volatility and occasionally that we currently characterize as the drives the volatility that we currently refers to the structure of the global order. That has frayed in many ways, refers to the becoming less predictable, that has frayed in many ways, becoming less predictable. There is a considerable amount of disorder, even less disciplined. It has become much harder. There is a considerable amount of consensus among more players. It has become much harder as to create a consensus. They do not agree on their inter-se position, especially as do not. What we see in multilateralism, especially the United Nations, what we see in multilateralism as well, especially the United Nations, consequently, expression we are turning increasingly to like-minded partners. Consequently, who gather together. We are turning increasingly to like-minded partners who gather together. Is in regard to the landscape. After 1945, is in regard to the landscape. This was neatly compartmentalized after 1945. For the convenience was neatly compartmentalized into that has begun to change for the convenience of dominant powers and commitments that has begun to change as capabilities are constrained and commitments come into question. Greater collaboration. A more modest era, and it also requires wider arena collaboration to be effective. And it also requires this wider arena is the emergence of the Indo-Pacific. A good example of this is the emergence of the Indo-Pacific. There are the different challenges that we confront. There are 3 decades of globalization challenges have created tremendous economic and technology concentrations. Have created tremendous economic and technology concentrations. These have led to the leveraging of trade, of investment, connectivity. These have led to the leveraging of even of mobility, of investment. In many cases, the nature of power itself is undergone a change. This has in many cases, the nature of power itself has undergone a change. National boundaries no longer provide effective defense. National boundaries, on the contrary, no longer provide every technology advance. AI, on the contrary, green every technology advance, space or drones. AI has also brought green or clean tech, new space or drones. Has also few nations can deal with it on their own. New vulnerabilities. At the same time, the competition for primacy can deal with it on their own. Also become at the same time the competition for primacy has also become to add to this mix is a shift in global attitudes. To add to the unequal benefits of globalization, global and the stagnation in the quality of life, the unequal benefits of globalization and the stagnation in the quality of life for many societies. The trauma of COVID has created the world even more insecure. The trauma we have all experienced has made the world even more to depend on others. We have all experienced what it is strategic autonomy on others is therefore basic necessities by many more countries. Strategic autonomy is therefore sought by many more countries. In this background, it is not surprising that global risk in this background has been it on is the not increase. Surprising that we global risk conflict in Europe has been in disregard for international law we in see Asia, it in conflict in Europe and in the ongoing development in the Middle East in Asia and often in the ongoing developments in the Middle East and long-standing agreements are not being necessarily observed. Raising question marks about the stability of the environment in which we all raising question marks about the stability of the environment in which we all operate. The most universal expression of the global order is still the United Nations. The most universal expression of the global order is still the United Nations. Paramount importance. Its fellow members of the G4 group, paramount India and Japan seek to make the members of the G4 group more contemporary. India and Japan seek to make clearly an uphill task more contemporary, but one in which we must persevere. This is clearly an uphill task. As to powers that are so central to multipolarity in Asia,